Hey guys, it is known. Welcome to episode 11 of You, Me, Empathy. Thanks for being here. I'm so happy you're here. I love hearing from you guys via Twitter at You, Me, Empathy or Instagram at You, Me, Empathy or via the Facebook community, which is facebook.com/groups/You, Me, Empathy. I just appreciate your feedback and anytime you want to comment on a particular episode or someone's story, relates to you or you're affected by it in some way. I really love to hear that. It's why I do the show. So feel free to reach out either via social media or you can just reach out to me via email at youmeempathy@gmail.com. Okay, so today's show is with Tony time. For another round of Tony time, we are chatting about mindfulness and meditation yoga. He talks to me about how he's starting to use more body-based sort of methodologies in his practice, and he also makes fun of me for flubbing the opening, so enjoy that. And the disclaimer for the show, as I always say, is that the You, Me, Empathy podcast is for informational and or entertainment purposes only. It is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I am a simple, feely human, and I am not a professional. So that's the disclaimer. So I'm not sued. That's fun. I love you guys. Thanks for being part of the You, Me, Empathy community. Thanks for being a You, Me, Empathy hero. And if you haven't subscribed to the show or rated and reviewed the show in iTunes, Apple Podcasts, please do. It's a little free, simple way to support the show, and I read every review. I'm sort of obsessed with it. So, feed my obsession. Anyways, thanks guys, and enjoy the episode.
La la la, you, me, empathy, yeah. La la la.
Welcome to episode 11 of You, Me, Empathy, a podcast about exploring the struggles we face in our day-to-day lives as humans trying to get by on this wondrous and overwhelming and sometimes frustrating pale blue dot. The intent of You, Me, Empathy is to talk openly without judgment about our neuroses, our mental illnesses, our shared anxieties and worries, to create a dialogue that is vulnerable and deeply human and empathetic, and to share that dialogue with others to inspire conversation and to inspire conversation and insight so we can, hand in hand, break down the stigma that make us feel shame and guilt for struggling, for feeling our feelings, for being feely humans. You, Me, Empathy is a safe space, a conversation between friends, a place to inspire empathy and beauty in all of us. Today in episode 11, I am here for another round of Tony time on the topic of meditation, yoga, and mindfulness as a follow-up to episode 10 with my guest, Jordana Ream. Hey, Tony time.
Hello. I was just wondering, first, are you going to keep that intro in there with the slips and everything? Because I loved it.
Well,
it's so human.
God damn it, now I have to because you called it out.
I'm so happy I did. That made me so happy. Thank you.
Oh,
It's
sure.
just such a human moment.
Yeah, no problem. I'm here for you, Tony.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
By the way, is that memorized or are you reading something?
I'm reading something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm like, that'd really be amazingly impressive.
Right?
Right?
Maybe eventually I could do it. But,
I've maybe thought by episode 11 you had it down.
No, maybe by 111.
111.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
we'll see if we get that far.
That's a goal.
Yes, it is. So, for the listeners, if it's your first time listening, I want to introduce my friend Tony. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, sir?
Absolutely. My name is Tony Romeike, and professionally, I go by Anthony Romeike, as my board would recognize me here in the state of California. So I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist with the board of the board. With the Board of Behavioral Sciences here in California, and my license number is LMFT 47805. And again, I'm a practicing marriage and family therapist here in the beautiful, wonderful state of California.
Awesome. And these episodes, these Tony Time episodes, as you guys know, maybe the newbies don't know. Hopefully, there's millions of newbies listening. But for you guys, these come in between the regular long form interviews. This is the irregular zone with Tony.
I'm trying not to feel less than right now. These are the filler episodes.
These are the me chatting with someone who works in the field, and right. Where we kind of break down more the topics from the previous week in more depth from sort of his perspective as a licensed therapist. So let's
chat
about mindfulness.
Yes.
So first, what is mindfulness? Can we describe it? Define it?
Absolutely. Mindfulness is certainly not a new practice by any means, but it might be new to a lot of people here who are maybe just learning about it or hearing about it. But it's a very ancient practice in a sense of really being self-aware and being very much in the present. So the practice, certainly has its roots. When we think of meditative practices, we think of maybe yoga-based practices, and we think of, Eastern philosophy and related practices. It all really kind of ties back into that. But we've certainly in recent years adapted it here in the Western culture, and particularly in therapy and psychotherapy practices, to really fully have people experience a more integrative experience than what they may have been previously experiencing from traditional psychotherapy, or what we consider just talk therapy. And I'm loving it. I mean, I'm absolutely loving mindfulness, learning about mindfulness. It's something that's pretty new for me as well in my research and study, I should say. And, others, I believe, who are looking into this more seriously as researchers, like Bessel van de Kolk that we've talked about, are getting great results, in understanding the helpfulness of mindful-based type of practices. And I loved the episode with Jordana. I mean, I thought it was such a great episode, and I thought she had such wonderful, practical, real life experiences to share with regards to her journey and now her practices. So it was so interesting for me and so informative.
Oh, good. Yeah, mindfulness has, as you pointed to, a long history, and one that comes from, has a long history in Hinduism and Buddhism and some other religions. For me, it's something that's new to me as well.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying, really the last couple of years, trying to be more present, more sort of, I guess, less focused on the past and the future, all these things that we don't have control over.
That make us anxious.
That make us anxious, that, can frustrate, that can just cause emotional turmoil.
Right.
So what kinds of things are you learning as you're sort of looking into mindfulness and meditation and these other types of practices? What are you learning? And then are you at the stage yet where you're sort of prescribing some of this stuff to your clients, talking about it with them?
I would say that's kind of just starting to happen now.
Okay.
Where I think I'm really starting now to look at this as kind of an adjunct add-on to what we do in the room regarding psychotherapy and talk-based therapy. But also, there are some elements I think that clinicians can bring into the room with their clients if properly trained. And some of that is, kind of exactly what we're talking about, kind of mindful-based type of practices. And I think where, kind of maybe within psychotherapy as a whole, as a practice, I think where this kind of found its way into the process, so to speak, is really through trauma work. And people who were practicing trauma work really started seeing the benefits of, yoga-based type of practices, meditative-based practices. And again, a lot of this came from people like Peter Levine, an absolute, amazing researcher.
Waking the
and
Tiger?
writer. Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
Waking the Tiger. And in fact, I picked up another book of his today, Trauma and Memory, which I'm really excited to read. And Bessel van der Kolk, who we refer to quite a bit on this program. These types of people have really led the way in understanding the way trauma is held in the body. And how do we reach that person then? How do we really reach that client? Because, we tend to focus on maybe more cognitive aspects of therapy when we think about, maybe the talk therapy model and the talk therapy process. But what they're bringing in is this understanding of what's happening in a person's body or what's happening to them in a way that they're not connected. So, and one of the things we understand about trauma is trauma is so overwhelming to the person and so threatening to their sense of self when it's occurring that there's usually this disconnection that occurs or disassociation that happens. And once that process has occurred, we also have, this kind of brain-based process for self-preservation that kicks in. And we tend not, or we could potentially live a far more restricted life as a result of that. And one of the restrictions that we may experience is not being connected with ourselves. And so, again, these types of researchers have really brought to the forefront this understanding that a lot of people are very disconnected from themselves. And a lot of them are, somewhat, like we've talked before, either living with anxiety or maybe they're living with more of a mood disorder or, something maybe more related to depression, or there's a hyperarousal that's happening, or maybe there's, a hypoarousal that's happening, somebody who's too overregulated, somebody who's too underregulated. So I think one of the benefits to what we're learning about yoga and mindfulness is how to get people connected back to themselves where they've been so disconnected.
Yeah. So you experience something, whether it's severe anxiety or
Right.
depression or trauma.
Sure.
And naturally you want to run away from it, like in your mind.
Well, there's a survival element.
There's a survival aspect.
Right.
You want to disconnect. You want to push it down. I know I've experienced that. And so, we can't blame ourselves for that reaction. That's
not
total.
at all. This is an absolute, automatic response. This is not something people should feel, and we talk a lot about this, not feel shame about.
Yeah.
And not self-blame. This is survival. I mean,
Yeah.
you went into survival mode, whatever it was that you survived, whether it was something, and we've touched on some of this during the PTSD episode, but whether you've come back from war and experienced the horrible atrocities of that, or whether it's been growing up in an environment in which where maybe there was anger and rage, and maybe you were unfortunately the victim of, trying to think of the right words there, but truly victim of physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, neglect. And you needed to survive. And maybe part of that survival required some form of disconnection.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, like I've said many times, we're survival-based beings. I mean, the more I do this work, the more I read, the more I sit with, hours and hours of clients, the more amazed I am, truly amazed that what people are surviving and how they're accommodating and adjusting and learning to survive. I mean, I'm constantly completely amazed at the human body and the human spirit and what we've overcome. It's just, it's mind-boggling. So we're survival creatures. I mean, we learn to adapt and to survive under the worst of circumstances, and some of which we know from Holocaust survivors. You know, and Viktor Frankl's book, The Search for Meaning, is just one of the most amazing books ever. So it's just, we're survival beings, and whatever it requires for us to do that, we do. So I feel like yoga, mindfulness is really a practice to bring us back to self-connection and self-awareness.
Yeah. And, and I'm glad you said we're survival beings, because that for me, that gives me hope, right? Because you're right. Like I say it often out loud and to myself that that I'm resilient, that I
Right.
can experience a thing and I will get through it.
Right.
Right. And there are things that I've gone through and people in my life that have gone through some you think of Bernadette
Yeah.
from
Absolutely.
episode 5. Like, she had experienced quite a bit of trauma and now she's doing the work to connect back with herself.
Right.
And it's so courageous and amazing. And so the listeners, like, for you, like, if you're experiencing something, it's difficult, but we're survival beings, as
Yes.
Tony says. Like, we can get through it, and there is some relief and help in things like meditation, mindfulness, and that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like to think of people, as this concept of truly survival based beings, and knowing that we have that within us, right? Knowing that there is that resilience. There was some studies, and I talked about this on this past Tuesday night, so it's still a little fresh in my mind. And but there was a study done, I believe it was 1995 through 1997, and it was a joint venture between Kaiser Permanente and the Centers for Disease Control. And they did a 2-year, I guess we'd call that a longitudinal study, where they were actually able to, interview, survey their HMO-based clients and also perform physical exams. And they were able to make the comparison between early childhood experiences, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, problems that were happening in the household. And they developed the study, and it was called the ACE study. And it's all on the internet. If people want to look this up, you can Google ACE studies. And it was the Adverse Childhood Experiences study. And it's amazing, the data that they were able to produce from this study. And they were able to basically look back at adverse childhood experiences and kind of the predictive qualities of what that could potentially mean for us in the future.
Sure.
Whether that meant, substance abuse, whether that meant depression, anxiety, financial problems, job-based work performance issues, and kind of look at the predictive information that they received. But one of the qualities that they were kind of, gathering from this process was the concept of resilience and the concept of that, that being such a key concept for people's survival, and the fact that, obviously the greater the resilience, the greater somebody's going to come through a process. But the fact that we have resilience, so.
Yeah, no, that gives me hope. So what are, going back to mindfulness and meditation and yoga and these practices, what are some of the first steps someone can do to connect with their body? To they're disconnected, they've experienced
Right.
something, and they want to be more connected to their body, because it's as we're pointing to, it's a healthier frame of mind, it's a healthier perspective.
Right.
They're more attuned to their physical bodies, their feelings, emotions. Like, what are some of like the first like building blocks?
First building blocks.
Yeah.
I think the first building block that I think of when about that question, and that's so easy to do, is breathing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just breathing.
Yeah.
And, that's something I will and like to do with clients if I see that they've come in and they're really hyper aroused.
You just breathe straight into their mouths.
Just.
You're just like, I've had garlic for dinner. I will breathe into your mouth now. Give me $300.
And thanks for coming. So,
Sorry.
that's what known would do. In my practice, I will not. But no, just get the client to stop. And first of all, sometimes it's simply that, I just have them actually just stop. And I might even ask a very simple question like, what are you aware of right now that's happening in your body?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what's so amazing about that approach is the it's like a freight train that's just going 100 miles an hour, and you ask that question, and there's almost an instant stop.
Yeah,
that occurs
because you never think of that question.
You don't think of that question.
No,
it's not a question we normally think about.
No,
especially if we're in survival mode.
Yeah.
It's just, how do I get from this to the next moment? And actually stopping and pausing and thinking about that question is so helpful. And usually at that point too, if needed, there's, let's have you stop and let's have you have some focused breathing.
Yeah.
And let's actually pay some attention to breathing, and and do those purposeful, intentional, deep, diaphragm based kind of breathing, instead of these, what I tend to see quite a bit is people doing these very short, shallow breaths. And so stopping and paying attention to their body and recognizing their breathing patterns and recognizing that they're taking very short, choppy breaths and that they're really not pausing to take in these deep breaths. Again, so simple, right? I mean, this is something I like to practice throughout the day myself when I remember to, and that's not nearly often enough. And to even just kind of re-regulate myself, just to kind of slow down. I can be as caught up as the next person on, with this process of just thinking about, what do I have the next moment? What do I have the next hour? Therapy itself has actually, for me, been an amazing practice at learning how to be in the moment as I do that, with the clients that I'm sitting with. I don't want to be thinking about a shopping list or what's, and a lot of times I can't, and for good reason, that I want to be as present as possible with every client that I'm sitting with and in the moment. And if I'm in the moment with them, I feel like I'm so much more, intentional, and I'm such a better listener. And we're talking about, kind of body alignment to body alignment in terms of what I might be aware of, what's happening inside of myself that might be important in terms of what's happening inside of the session. And so if I'm more self-aware, regulated, calm, focused, then I'm going to be a lot more aware of what's happening in the client. If I'm even just more attuned to what's happening inside of myself, and, being able to bring that up. So breathing right off the bat is asking that question, slowing somebody down to be self-aware in the moment, having them do potentially some focused breathing, and even some centering techniques, working with people on a very basic, guided imagery type of process where, just getting their feet firmly planted on the ground, and this is really helpful for people who are very, kind of hyper aroused, where they may be experiencing exceptional anxiety, or dysregulation, or what we may even consider disassociation, where there's a strong disconnection with self that they feel like they might be experiencing. Getting them kind of back to a place of centered and groundedness, and that's an important part of psychotherapy at various times when needed.
How do you center them? Like, what is, you said imagery, like what does that look
I
like?
mean, it's kind of what I was talking about, which is, focused breathing.
Okay.
It's talking about getting getting them very, physically aware, of their body posture, getting them aware of that their feet are firmly planted on the ground, and recognizing the support of the couch, and recognizing the support they're experiencing in their trunk, in their back, working, all the way up to the shoulders, and recognizing what's happening in their shoulders, what's recognizing.
Did you say in their trunk?
Yeah, midsection,
okay.
basically, yeah.
Not their butt.
No, just, midsection, what's kind of happening in their core section.
Got it.
And, all the way up into shoulders, and feeling, again, the support of the couch, feeling the support of the ground, feeling the support, that their arms are firmly, comfortably rested, maybe on the knees, and getting them, again, very much in this place of calm, centered breathing, usually moving them out of very shallow breath, almost, moving them away from what could be ventilation, hyperventilation, moving them back to a very calm type of state. So, again, as a marriage and family therapist, what I'm always working on is relational based things. And, so whether that's an intrapsychic process that's happening within them, in the world around them, and certainly what's happening interpersonally between me and the client, and what they take out of that room interpersonally in their relationships. And I think self-awareness is, as Jordana had talked about, and others have talked about, Bessel talks about quite a bit, is, this isn't a compartmentalized part of ourselves. I mean, we take it into all relationships. So whether that's your marriage, whether that's in your friendships, in your family.
Yeah, I think I mentioned in the last episode that I've been doing yoga.
Yeah.
And it is very grounding for me, and it forces myself to be present and breathe deeply. And the instructor is very good. She always reminds us to pay attention to how we're sitting, pay attention to how we're standing, and our feet, how they feel and how they're planted, on the ground. And whenever I do yoga, like the next day or two, I'm more mindful of those things, and it's just a brighter life experience.
Yeah, when I do it, I feel exactly the same thing. If a client's done it, they've reported back to me a lot of those similar type of results, and those are anecdotal. I mean,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
research based, but just anecdotal. And they're kind of giving me the same feedback. And I loved what Jordana had said when she was talking about just some of her early practices of yoga and recognizing yoga, and I think she was mentioning meditation as well. And what she noticed, in the way that she was, because of the benefits that she was experiencing within herself, noticing the benefits that she started to have in her other relationships. And I think at this point she was talking about her relationship with her team members, coworkers,
yeah.
She was starting to think about, her interactions with them. And she was starting to think about, well, what motivates them? And thinking, it's almost like she had so much more to give. It was as a result of this really healthy way that she was giving to herself. And, I love that. I mean, that's certainly something I know I want in my life.
Well, it makes sense, right? Because when we're not focused on the present,
Yeah.
we're thinking of the past, we're thinking of the future, we're thinking about all these things, we're thinking about shopping lists, you said,
Right.
and all of our mental energy is like going toward all these things that don't mean anything.
And none of which is in the present.
None of which is in the present.
None of which we can control any longer.
None of which, exactly. And then, as Jordana pointed out, or as you just correctly surmised, then you don't have that energy to give toward the people in your life that you love.
Nope.
Yeah.
No, I mean, and I think so much energy gets expended there. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I really feel like most of us spend most of our time either in the past or in the future.
Yeah.
And we don't spend it in the present. We're always focusing on tomorrow. We're always focusing on what's happening at, work this upcoming week and retirement and, or what I've done in the past, like spending too much time in the past, which, again, I'm actually a proponent of looking back in our past, but really more, from an understanding, insight-based point of view, not dwelling or being stuck in. And, where, we're maybe going through very negative schemas, from a cognitive, belief, core belief place of a very negative self, perspectives and ruminating and dwelling on all these old, either behaviors or regrets or, but again, just not allowing us to be currently present in the moment and connected.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of what I feel like in that episode, listening to you and Jordana talk about everything, I think a word that was never said, but I felt like implied so much in your conversations with her was this idea of connection. So we're talking about self-connection and we're talking about connection with others. And if we're not connected with self, I mean, it's so difficult to be connected with another person and appropriately connected, right? Attuned, correctly attuned to another person and what they're going through. And for me, that's, such a necessity of life and such a quality of life type of perspective. So if we're too much in the past, we're too much in the future, and we're losing all these present connection, which is really the only connection we have, right? Is what's happening in the present.
Yep.
So
breathing, centering our bodies. Yeah. Are there other things that recommend?
I think just, moving outside of certainly any kind of work that I do, but things that, people do and seem to be getting great benefit from is yoga, like we talked about.
Yeah. Which
there's so many various practices of yoga. I wouldn't even start to know even which to, recommend, since this is something that's so still new for me. And even when I look at a form, at a yoga place and I'm looking at the different, options, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have a clue. So I'm still having to learn descriptions and everything. But
I do what's called it's core yoga. So they're focusing on core work, but it's still very she's using all the yoga words and it's very
right. Very namaste.
Namaste,
yes.
Shavasana,
Yes.
all that stuff,
Right.
Which I like. I like a lot. Yeah, it's fun.
No, it's fascinating. I think there's so much great things there to learn about the practice of yoga.
Definitely.
And, even, I think you two were talking about, and you were kind of sharing your mindful based, meditative based kind of new practices. And she was talking about, the just redundancy, the necessity and the consistency and the redundancy and how that builds and grows.
Yes.
And I love that too. I mean, because sometimes I'll be like, well, I don't have time for this. Well, that's not true. I only need to, I can take a minute or two or 5 minutes and have a tremendous benefit. And one of the things, gosh, that I loved what she said, a couple things. One was when she was you two were talking about, that this isn't not having thoughts. You know, I think a lot of us, I have, you know, in the past, I've thought like it meant completely clearing my mind.
Right. Yeah.
And actually recognize, and I wasn't able to do that, so I thought I was doing it horribly. but actually learning to pay attention. I mean, the process seems to entail actually learning to pay attention to the thoughts, where you get to be, I think she said observer, which I loved, but you know, I feel like it's this observer participant kind of experience of knowing what my thoughts are, because that's again that connection that I'm wanting to see for clients and even for myself is greater self-connection. So what are my thoughts? And I think we're running through this crazy harried life, not paying attention to ourselves, and we're paying attention too much to everything outside of ourselves that's happening around us. And I mean, at least for us here in Orange County, I feel like we're flooded, constantly flooded with, stimuli. Yeah, I mean, there's so much stimuli coming at us at, every angle possible.
Yeah.
And I can get, caught up with television and other forms of stimuli that I would probably much rather not, and just actually sit with myself and my own thoughts. So that's something for me that I'm going to continue to work on. So learning to take those couple minutes. And you said, or she said, this idea that watching a movie of yourself, like being able to be the observer of your movie, witness, to be the witness of your life. That. Love that. I mean, I thought that was so cool, and what a great concept. And I'm certainly going to, implement that in my life. And
Yeah.
So these are the big things I'm thinking about, mindfulness, meditative. And she mentioned kind of a spiritual aspect to this, and I agree, regardless of what somebody's spiritual beliefs are, but just, I think there's such a strong spiritual component in such a healthy way related to spiritual growth, self-care, and spiritual connection that we can completely miss. I mean, I think we can just completely disconnect from and not be fed in a way, I think, that really feeds our soul. So we can feed ourselves, in a lot of unhealthy ways, and but not still be fed.
Yeah,
we can eat a lot of junk food and not really eat anything healthy.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it. I think a couple of things I wanted to highlight that you said is, one, that mindfulness and meditation, specifically like meditation, you don't need to. It doesn't need to take a ton of your time, right?
Right.
You could do 5 minutes, and it is like those 5 minutes are, a focused. You're focusing on your breathing. You're focusing on your thoughts, and as Jordana,
what's happening in your body.
What's happening in your body?
Right.
You're just being in the moment, and as Jordana said, if your thoughts wander, you just gently, sort of kindly push them back on the path, and you're not being, hard on yourself.
Yep.
I started trying to do more meditation, and I'm going to continue trying to do more. And the other point is, like, doing so, it'll get easier and easier as you do it, because it becomes a practice. Yeah, it becomes a practice.
Right. Right. Like anything, right? Going to the gym or study or, whatever it is that we are intentionally consistently putting our focus to, it tends to get easier, right? I mean, and it tends to become more organic and natural. And it seems as if, from her experiences, I mean, it just becomes such an integrative part then of your being. And that is something I desire. I mean, just it becoming such a normal, organic part of my life that it's just a fully integrated experience, that I participate in. And, what an amazing, I think path, as she mentioned, to practice and be on. So,
yeah. So to use a right now personal anecdote to this, I am currently today is Saturday, and tomorrow, as we record this, Sunday, I will be recording an episode with Paul Gilmartin.
That's right. I was going to ask you about that,
and I'm anxious about it.
Right.
I'm like thinking about it, and I keep catching myself, like, the more I think about it, like, that's not going to help me. That's
right.
I can do a little research, I can take some notes, and I can be as present as I can. Because one of the things, I don't know if I mentioned it on the episodes, but one of the things I'm finding out as I'm doing this show is that the less I focus on my notes, the better the conversation is, because I can be more present and
Right.
actively listening and engaged with my guest.
Right.
And those conversations are always better.
Yeah.
So like that's like a no-brainer reminder to myself to say, hey, focus on the present.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. You have the communication skills to work through it, and the conversations are always better. They go in like more
Yeah.
fun places, and it's less structured and less sort of just like, you have like tons of scaffolding. You don't want
Right.
scaffolding,
Right.
So that's just like a real life sort of reminder to myself that like, hey, be in the moment. You're going to be fine.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah,
So-
no, I so agree with you. I know I've done that, probably way too many times than I would have liked to, whether that was in a speech setting, or some form of presentation, or maybe an interview setting where, I have all my notes and the things. And what I tend to find is I'm completely missing what's happening with the person,
Yeah.
whether that's an audience or whether that's just somebody that I have in front of me, like I said, maybe in an interview-based format, that I'm so focused on, what it is that I want to say or what it is that, I want to make sure that I'm getting to, that I'm way too focused on that, and I'm not being able to really be fully attuned to the person in front of me or the audience in front of me.
Right.
I've learned and continue to learn, and to just, set those things aside and try and go with what's happening in the moment, whether that's what I'm kind of picking up from the audience that I'm talking in front of, whether that's a group of students or whether that's, a interview format, whether it's you and I sitting with each other. It's, just setting that aside and just trying to be just empathically attuned to the person I'm sitting with, and where are we going, and what feels, interesting to pursue. And so, love it.
And it's not, it's not easy. It
No.
takes time,
Practice.
and like I struggle with it. We all do. But again, we don't have control of what's going to happen tomorrow. So focus on the now and what you can control and experience, because you looking ahead and looking back, you're robbing yourself of the rich, nuanced experience of the life and the people that you interact with. Like you're robbing yourself of like the richness of those experiences.
Yeah, and I think something that's come out of the addiction world and the 12-step based world, is this idea of one day at a time.
Yeah.
And I feel like they've gotten it right. I mean, I love the 12 steps and the the creation of the 12 steps, Bill W. And I mean, it's just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I think the 12 steps are some of the most amazing tools for addicts and non-addicts. And what I mean by that is I think they're just wonderful life principles. I mean, absolutely amazing life principles. And this concept of either whether it's the serenity prayer or whether it's this concept of one day at a time. But, I think one day at a time works because it puts us in the present. And it puts us connected to self. And if we're trying to predict our, sobriety, or we're trying to control our sobriety a year from now or 6 months from now or even a week from now, I think we're falling into these places that we don't want to be. We're falling into these highly arousing, maybe anxious producing, fear-based type of responses. And when we do that, the brain has a very difficult time being in the present. It, all of a sudden it goes into this other, kind of survival-based, kind of process. And that's not where we always want to be. So, again, one day at a time, it's an amazing principle for everybody. For everybody.
Absolutely. So what else do we want to talk about in regards to mindfulness and presence and meditation and yoga? What are we missing? Are we missing anything?
Probably missing just
So much.
truckloads.
So much.
So much. I mean,
But we can only speak to our experiences and
yeah. I mean, I think it's a significantly, hugely growing field, and I actually think with regards to the work that I do or the field that I'm in, mental health and psychotherapy. I personally feel like with everything that we're learning with regards to neuroscience And I think everything that we're learning with body-based and neuro-based processes and experiences, that I see this continuing to ultimately become something that just continues to grow and grow and grow and grow in its significance with treatment. And I think more tools, I think with greater effectiveness in the treatment of mental health conditions, specifically things around, again, trauma, addiction, problems with dysregulation, people who are or tend to be very dysregulated. And, and again, whether we're looking at hyper-aroused type of experiences or even hypo-aroused, and really creating this mind-body connection, a holistic type of a treatment approach. I just see that continuing to grow and grow and grow. And I think as, my industry as well as other industries grab hold of this, learn and continue to make this, a further, thing for research and possibly treatment, that'll spill out into the general public, I think in many other ways, continuing to make this, I think, a practical and maybe even very understandable concept that I think people will be able to introduce into their lives. So I love it, and I'm super excited about it. There's a cool word, it's called interoception, and it's this idea about being able to sit with ourselves. And I love that, and I just, if I think of that as a practice for people, it's such a wonderful mental health based practice. So there's probably truckloads more that
I think
neither
that's
of us
good.
even know, but I think it's such a wonderful conversation for us to have. I'm so thankful that you had Jordana on for that episode, because I think there's so much just wonderful material here for us to learn, and I just think there's so much more to learn. I think we're in infancy of really understanding where this is going. I know now, I was doing some research and I saw on the internet that there's trauma sensitivity based yoga that's in practice, and I think there's even some certifications for people who are going to work with trauma based people. There's somatic experiencing psychotherapy practice. There's equine therapy, and all these are kind of around this idea of mindfulness. Neurofeedback. There's neurofeedback, which is gaining a lot of interest. And
have you heard of mindfulness-based relapse prevention?
I haven't heard anything or much about that, but at least the words sound.
Yeah, I was doing some research earlier. It's on psychiatry.org.
Okay.
Mindfulness-based relapse prevention, or MBRP, was designed to treat substance use disorder. It integrates mindfulness, meditation, and cognitive behavior skills, specifically focused on helping patients learn to choose a reaction instead of automatically turning to an addictive substance.
I love it.
It involves 8 weekly 2-hour group training sessions. Yeah. So it just...
Yeah, well, that sounds somewhat similar to dialectical behavioral therapy. And again, allowing people to kind of choose a response, like be aware of how they're feeling or thinking and choose a response. Again, very, very, very useful for people who tend to be very dysregulated emotionally. So someone who might be prone to substance abuse use, to, kind of regulate from a unhealthy substance-based way. So I mean, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
And it sounds very much in line with again, what we're learning a lot within the addiction world as well. Because, these are a group of people who tend to be very dysregulated, who tend to have poor coping, and tend to have also had at times trauma-based backgrounds. And so something that they can do to reconnect with themselves and choose different choices, right? Healthier choices, different behaviors, before they impulsively act and choose something that ultimately won't be healthy for them. So I love this. I mean, this is such great stuff, and I'm so excited about my journey of learning, and I'm excited that we get to talk about it and
our journey together.
Our journey together as well, absolutely. So
listeners, some key takeaways: 1 day at a time.
Yeah.
Breathing, deep breaths. As you listen to in episode 10, we had a 3 deep breath session. That helps me a lot. I used to write breathe on my hand for years. So breathing 1 day at a time, connection, working on that, connecting to ourselves, trying to forget about past and present, and know that those things we don't have control over. So relinquish that control. and be kind to yourself.
Absolutely. Kindness and compassion.
Yeah.
You know, and even one other thought as you were talking about that, because I think you said you're using this, is the Calm app.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, there's so many great apps out there now for breathing and for centering, if you will, calming. So, you know, yeah, there's even some great apps I think people can look up. So,
Yeah, there was one, I'll mention it again. There was one mentioned, the Stop, Breathe, Think app.
yeah.
Headspace is one. And then I had mentioned it in episode 10, but, you know, having like, creating like specific playlists for your meditation practice.
Metallica.
Yeah,
Right.
Metallica, Slayer, you know, all that stuff.
Godsmack.
Yeah. Stuff like that. So those are good. Those are some good tips. I think that about does it. Do you feel good?
I feel like
Okay. Good. Well, thanks for joining me, Tony.
Hey, always a pleasure.
I
Who
appreciate
was
it.
it? Was it Jess that said the Tone and Known show?
The tone and known. Someone said
Known
it.
and Tone.
The known and
Did
tone.
you see how I did that? I put tone first. This is technically your show.
Wow. You see that,
Did you
guys?
see that?
It's a mutiny.
Right?
We have a mutiny on our hands.
It's a takeover.
Yeah. So anyways, I thank you guys for listening. Please go out and subscribe and rate and review in iTunes if you haven't done that. And we have a Patreon page at patreon.com/YouMeEmpathy. I have some new stickers you can get. You can be a guest on the show. All sorts of goodness. So thanks again for listening. Thank you to Tony.
Yeah, thank you. Always a pleasure.
And as always, I'm here, you're here. We're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring pale blue dot. We have each other. It's you, me, empathy.
La, la, la.